Hello YouTube, this is in continuation from my last tutorial, but now we're going to enable your bot to connect to a SteamGuard protected account. So go to your onLoggedOn callback function. Now, if the SteamGuard account, if the account is SteamGuard protected, we are going to receive an email with an authentication code that Steam sends us so that it knows that we are the actual user. So we're going to ask the user for that authentication code. Then you're going to add that fancy little bracket thing we talked about in the last tutorial, and then callback.emailDomain. This is a nice thing to do. It lets them know what domain their email is, like gmail.com or hotmail.com. So it'll say, please enter the auth code sent to the email at gmail.com. This is a nice thing in case someone forgot which email domain they're using, just to help them remember which email they used. So now we're going to create a string to contain the authentication code. Static string auth code. We're not going to set it to anything because that's exactly what we're about to do inside the onLoggedOn callback. So we set auth code equal to something. Now, how do you grab input from a user on a console? If you said console.readline, you are 100% correct. So this part's going to be a little bit dynamic, so bear with me because there are two things interacting with each other. But what we're going to do is create an update machine auth callback. This callback is fired whenever someone tries to connect to a SteamGuard protected account and they are not authenticated. So what we're going to do is create the callback. This is a very special kind of callback. It's called a job callback. So new job callback, Steam user dot machine update machine auth callback, and then we're going to pass it our authentication function, which we're going to create soon. So we're just put update machine auth callback and then manager. So what a job callback does is it performs a very specific action, and it's very vital to what Steam does. I don't really understand the difference between a callback and a job callback, but I'll try to explain it as best as I can. A job callback performs, obviously, a job, and the program can't function without that job. So I think a job callback is kind of like a function that something is returned, but don't quote me on that because I'm fairly sure I'm wrong. So we're going to create static void update machine auth callback, and then Steam user dot update machine auth callback, and then just give me a second. And then this is another unique thing to a job callback, is we need to have it receive a job ID as well, and then just call it job ID. Now inside this function we're going to perform some very specific things that are very important to connecting to a SteamGuard protected account. This is essentially the meat and potatoes of the whole machine auth deal. So we're going to update something called the sentry file. A sentry file is a file that contains specific data that Steam remembers, and you send the hash of that data to Steam so that Steam knows that you're authenticated and allowed to do it. So tell the user that we're going to update it. So write line updating sentry file. And then what we need to do is grab the hash of the sentry file. So we're going to create an array of bytes and call it sentry hash. And then this is a funky thing that's very important. There are various hashing functions inside the crypto helper. And then we're going to send the secure hashing algorithm hash. That's what it stands for. So then we're going to send it the callback data, which is the data that Steam sends after you've been authenticated via that one-time authentication code. And then that's what Steam would normally write to its own Sentry file, but since we're running a bot, we're emulating Steam, essentially. So then we need to write all the information that Steam sends us to the file, and we can't do that without a special thing called using system.io. This is for interacting with files. So we're going to do file.writeAllBytes, and then we're going to write it to sentry.bin, which will appear in the directory that you have the main executable for the bot. And then we're going to write all of the callback data so that the Sentry file contains the correct data for the next time we try to connect. And if the Sentry bin contains the correct data, we don't have to go through the whole authentication process again. We just log in and it sends the hash of the Sentry bin to Steam, and they see that it contains the right stuff. So now we need to inform Steam that we are connecting to a SteamGuard protected account and now have the correct Sentry data. So we're going to create Steam user .send machine auth response. This is going to send, obviously, a machine authentication response telling Steam that we are now authenticated. Machine auth details, which contains, obviously, all the details for our authentication. So we're going to set the job ID equal to the job ID that our job callback gave us, and then comma, and then file name equals callback.filename. And so this is just going to keep on going with callback stuff. So, bytes written equals callback.bytes written, bytes to write. And then file size. Sorry, this part's really boring and, again, incredibly important. So then we're going to grab the callback data's length to send to Steam so that they know how long it's supposed to be. And then we're going to set the offset. Now, here's double jeopardy. What do you think it's going to be? If you said callback.offset, you're correct. And then we set the result equal to eResult.OK to inform Steam that nothing was wrong and everything was awesome. And we set last error to 0 to let Steam know that there weren't any issues. And then our one-time password is equal to callback.onetimepassword, which your one-time password is the one that was sent to your email. And when this callback is called, it receives that code that you entered. So then we set the Sentry file hash equal to Sentry hash. And then we need to inform the user that we are done. So something very important is we need to edit the steamuser.logon details inside of the onConnected callback. We're going to add some very special stuff that you can't function with, that this bot won't be able to function without if you're connecting to a SteamGuard protected account. What we need to do is set the auth code equal to the auth code that we received from the user. and then the sentry file hash equal to the sentry hash that we received. Now, I forgot to do something here, which was incredibly important, and that was to create the hash. So what we do is we create an if statement checking to see if the sentry.bin exists. So if file.exists, that's pretty explanatory. It's a bool variable that if the file exists will return true and execute the if statement. So now we need to create an array of bytes for the sentry file and read the sentry.bin so that we can hash the data later and send it to Steam. File.readAllBytes, sentry.bin. And now we need to create the hash. We need to set the hash. So we need to create an array of bytes, again, at the top of the if statement. So byte sentry hash equals null. So then we're going to set the sentry hash equal to cryptohelper.shahash sentry file, which creates the Steam hash, not the Steam hash, the secure hashing algorithm hash of this array of bytes, which we read from sentry.bin. So now we've got that completed, and there are no more errors here, so that when we log on, Steam receives the correct details, so that we can log on without a hitch. Now, what we need to do, which is completely, absolutely necessary, is to create an on-disconnected callback to reconnect the bot when SteamGuard disconnects it. Now, SteamGuard will disconnect it for whatever reason. I'm not quite sure, but it has something important to do with the authentication process. I'm pretty sure that after you log in and it's received the auth code, then Steam tells your Steam program to disconnect and reconnect so that it has the correct sentry file hash. So after this is sent, the correct auth code is sent, then the update machine auth callback is sent. So then it does everything that we did in here to update the sentry file. And then it disconnects you so that it doesn't have to do much, so that when you reconnect, you have the correct sentry hash. So let's create our on-disconnected callback. So, nothing too fancy, just callback Steam user dot disconnected. Oops. On disconnected. Oops. My bad. Let me check the notes. Steam client. My bad. Steam client dot disconnected callback. And then we're going to pass a non-existent function that we're going to create in a second called onDisconnected. And then pass it the manager, as we do with all of our callbacks. So let's create the onDisconnected function. I'm sorry if not a lot of this is making sense. I'm just really tired today. And then if I get enough comments saying they don't understand, I'll redo this tutorial and give it a lot more detail and a lot more explanation. So we create a static void onDisconnected, and we pass it the Steam client dot disconnected callback and the manager. Callback. And what we do here is we sleep the thread and attempt to reconnect again. Now what sleeping the thread does is it it's like a pause button for your program, and it's set for a limited amount of time. So we need to inform the user that we have disconnected and are trying to reconnect. Now this is again a line break, and it's just to make the console more clean, in my opinion, but you don't have to have that. So then we're going to do that fancy bracket thing, so that which is going to contain the username that you attempted to log in with. You don't have to include that, but it's just a nice thing to do. Now we're going to reconnect after 5 seconds have passed. And again, another line break. And then user, which those brackets will be replaced with. Okay, so now what we need to do is include system.threading. This is so that we can, obviously sleep the program. Threading. So we go back down there and say thread.sleep. Now you could do 5,000 for 5 seconds, which is 5,000 milliseconds is 5 seconds. Or you can do this, time span dot from seconds 5. Now this just multiplies 5 by 1,000, so that thread.sleep receives 5,000 for milliseconds. So then we reconnect by using the function SteamClient.connect. Okay, so I believe that I have covered everything, so let's test it. So now let's test it. Now, as you can see, there's going to be an auth code that's required. So I'm going to edit out the part where I'm grabbing my auth code. Okay, so we're going to paste it by edit.paste and then press enter. So it's going to disconnect. Okay, so I think I know what the problem is. I forgot to put a colon and a space. But that is not actually the actual problem. So let's try to connect again, just in case that actually was the problem. But I don't think it was. Okay, so I forgot to put console.write to make it look better. And that's probably one of the main causes of the issue. Okay, so as it turns out that my problem was this. This was keeping from the machine auth callback from being fired. This was from the last tutorial, a remnant, if you will. And I forgot to take it out when I started this tutorial. So that's why none of it would work. It is simply because of that. There was nothing else wrong. It was just because I was being stupid. Oh, and one of the other issues was I was using the wrong emails authentication codes because I have quite a few alts and I sometimes get the emails confused. So let me prove to you that it works. It's connecting to Steam. So this is why the reconnection thing's pretty good, because sometimes Steam won't connect, it'll time out, so then your bot won't connect. So this is going to retry a few times until it finally connects, and there it is. So as you can see, it works. I logged into a SteamGuard protected account. So I can show you. Here's the sentry bin. Everything's been written, so I'm going to delete it. And now I'm going to show you what it would look like if I were to actually grab my authentication code and have to enter it. So again, it's going to reconnect a few times. Alright, so I'm going to edit this part out while I'm grabbing my code. Okay, so now I have my code, so I'm going to paste it in and press enter. It's going to disconnect and reconnect, as it should. And then, as you can see, it's updated the Sentry file and everything's good. Everything's working. So please comment. I love feedback. Constructive criticism is great. I'd really appreciate it if you guys would list some of the things that I'm doing wrong, that you want me to do better, things I'm not explaining very well. Just that kind of deal. It'd be fantastic. I know some of the things I do wrong, like not fully prepared for these, even though I am, but haven't fully tested my notes, that kind of deal. So please comment, rate, and subscribe. I hope to do better in the future, so thank you for watching.